We got loads and loads to talk about here on this Wednesday edition of Locked On Vols. Josh Ward talks about the show for his weekly chat. Tennessee picks up its 9th commit, and four-star safety Sylvester Smith will break down that prospect and hear from his head coach. All that and more here today on Locked On Vols.
You are Locked On Vols, your daily podcast on the Tennessee Volunteers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Well, happy Wednesday, everybody, and welcome into this edition of Locked On Vols. I'm your host, Eric Kane. So glad to have you guys with me here today. If you're new to the show, welcome. I do radio in Knoxville, Tennessee. I also write for the rival side that covers Tennessee. That is VolQuest.com. Got loads and loads to get into here today, but don't forget, Locked On Vols is your first listen each and every day, your must-stop shop for all your Tennessee Volunteers news and entertainment details each and every day. It's available every single morning, weekday mornings on YouTube and wherever you find your podcast. Big turnout for Twitter Tuesday's mailbag edition yesterday. Can't thank you enough. Let's go ahead and get into Josh Ward. We hear from Josh Ward, spoke with him before the commitment of four-star safety Sylvester Smith. We'll have tons of coverage on that coming up in segments 2 and 3, where we'll end the show by, replaying a conversation I had with his head coach, Michael Easley. All that's to come later in the show. But let's check in with Josh Ward. What's he have to say about Tennessee athletics right now, the Hoops team adding a commit, Tennessee baseball continues to roll. Josh Ward and Jason Swain on Josh and Swain on 99.1 The Sports Animal also had Josh Heupel on their show on Monday. What were the highlights of that conversation with Tennessee's head football coach? Here's my conversation with the one and only Josh Ward for Ward Wednesday. That time of the week, we welcome on Josh Ward for a little Ward Wednesday action. Josh, welcome to the show.
Hey, great to be with you.
Fun times being had on Tennessee right now. Recruiting in full swing, of course, but we'll start the conversation with Tennessee baseball. A sweep at Florida, some heroics on Sunday, and the number one Volunteers continue to roll.
Tennessee continues to find ways to impress, excite, irritate. If you're having the discussion on the outside of Tennessee baseball, everything about Tennessee baseball right now is remarkable, from what goes on behind the scenes. So you think about Tony Vitello being unavailable. Tennessee doesn't skip a beat. In fact, he comes back and they hit a bit of a speed bump, and he jokingly says they bailed him out because he would have looked like a clown coming back and losing his first game back. So that shows the personality. But the pitching, to not have Dollander available on Saturday, so you just go to a combination of Tidwell and Sewell to just completely shut down Florida's lineup. And then on Sunday, the bats aren't there for a lot of the game, but when you need them the most, and you're wondering, okay, this team, if they're going to be in this kind of spot late in the season, how do they respond down late? Well, they responded as clutch as they could be to come back, tie it, and ultimately win it. We don't know how this is going to play out, but everything that we've seen to this point continues to back up Tennessee baseball clearly being the best team in the sport. We'll just see what the results are as the season goes along. But to this point, the results have been better than anybody could have projected.
We spoke on this yesterday, and I think this was a question presented by Logan Ward on the Eric Kane show. And I'm not trying to clown Brian and Eric, because I think there's a lot of Tennessee fans that would agree with them 100%. Would you take a College World Series championship, or would you take beating Florida or beating Alabama? The obvious answer here would be a College World Series championship, right? But I think that goes to show you just how much football moves the meter.
Sure, yeah. The answer is the national championship. I've said, because this question was posed to me, if you go with Florida, let's say beating Florida, because it hasn't happened much, right?
Yeah.
2016.
But
and then
it's a bad Florida team, so it should happen.
Exactly. That's where I'm going, is that, well, negotiating a win against Florida, what if it's a 6-6 Florida team or 7-5 Florida team? That doesn't guarantee you many results. You could lose to Pitt and lose to Kentucky and beat Florida. So that doesn't say much. Beating Alabama, that might say something else about your season. But we're still coming back to a national championship conversation, so don't pass on that. I would say this: take the national championship in baseball and then tell football, hey, go do your job to progress as a program the way that you should. But even the fact that you can have the conversation says something about how much football means and how much baseball still has to gain. But this season is different in that way, too. Like last year when Tennessee started to go on the run to the World Series, people hopped on board. This year, fans have been into it much more quickly. And the fans are loving what they're seeing. They love Tony Vitello. They love the personality of the players. So fans are not going to pass on a national championship with this team. They love this team for sure.
Big Orange Caravan stop, I believe it was Chattanooga last week, and Kelly Harper tells Rick Barnes, hey, your team needs to take some pointers from Josh Heupel's team. She turns to Josh Heupel, says, hey, your team needs to take some pointers from Rick Barnes' team. The comedian from Kelly Harper.
Yeah. Real personality, for sure.
I mean, for sure, yeah. That was huge.
Yeah, probably. I'm not saying she wasn't comfortable, but showing that she is comfortable in the position that she's in. She's had time to probably establish what she wants the program to be and obviously expects more results moving forward. But I thought the results this year, considering injuries, really good. So now that she's established what she wants the program to be, and these coaches, I think, feel really comfortable with the leadership of the athletic department and what their roles are. So Rick Barnes' personality has been on display. Tony Vitello, the same. I think Josh Heupel's is coming out even more, and maybe some of that's being uncomfortable in the role and trying to be comfortable in that spot. But there's just, I know it's been said over and over again. I have here and on the radio, but
you're in a good spot right now.
You really are, and enough time has passed. Like I brought this up with Swain on our radio show. Like, what about the always keep the cup on, or do you always knock on wood? He's like, enough time has passed where you don't have to just keep knocking on wood. Like something bad can happen. That's just how it works. But it's not like something just started to go Tennessee's way. They've been on a pretty good run for a little while now. Now you just need to keep it up.
Josh Ward here joining the show. Josh Ward Wednesday here on Locked On Vols. Josh, you miss out on Yuri Collins. You miss out on some other players in the transfer portal, but Tennessee basketball does gain the commit of a Tennessee native in Tyreek Key, a guy that is a pure scorer. He really is. His three-point shooting percentage went down. He didn't play last year, shoulder surgery, and I think that his percentage went down the year prior because of that injury. But one of the best scorers really in the country a couple of years ago, coming over from Indiana State, and going to be added to what looks to be a loaded backcourt for Tennessee.
Well, a reason I like the move, bringing Tyreek Key in, is he's experienced. He's an older guy to come in. That's going to help. But look at the way Tennessee ran the offense last year. I'm not saying he's going to be Kennedy Chandler, who could be a first-round pick, top 20 pick maybe in the NBA draft, but Key is a guy that he can play with the ball. He can play off the ball, which is going to be important because Zakai Ziegler's role probably continues to grow.
Yeah.
I'm guessing Key's going to have open shot opportunities that opened up within the offense this past year, and I think that's why they got better shooting the basketball as the year went along. So his ability to score, they needed to replace Chandler's scoring ability, and I'm not saying he will be Kennedy, but Tyreek Key has a chance to add that to the offense because assuming you're getting Vescovi back and Josiah Jordan-James back, you start to have really good scoring options on the perimeter. Front court will continue to be a question mark. It's a big question mark for me until we get some answers there. But the backcourt, if Zakai's better, and why can't Vescovi be better? Why can't Josiah Jordan-James be better? If that's the case with some of those guys, certainly all of those guys, we haven't gotten to Meshack or Powell and what his role could be, those players can be. There's still a lot of potential for this team. Front court's the biggest question for me, but I don't have many concerns with the backcourt at all.
And lastly, you and Swain on Josh and Swain 99.1 The Sports Animal, noon to 3 every single weekday. You guys had on Josh Heupel on Monday. What was that conversation like? Give me some of the highlights. And, of course, you guys can all go listen to it on just following you guys on Twitter. You post it there. And, of course, at 991thesportsanimal.com.
Yeah, so we're coming out of spring, and I'll continue to say that there's very little we can take out of spring, what happened on the field with what the team will be. You can find bits and pieces and talk about individual players. I think it's the bigger picture. So part of the conversation started with guys heading to the NFL draft, Matthew Butler, Alontae Taylor, Velus Jones. So you have to replace the leadership that they provided. Those guys really did buy in, and you don't have the 7-5 season without those older guys who are part of another transition buying in and helping lead the way. So you have to replace that. So Hendon Hooker, he's probably your top player, right? He's a big reason for the hype. Josh Heupel said that they've challenged Hendon to be a better leader. He is not a big vocal guy, but
you can see that, yeah.
But he is the quarterback coming back, and he is getting some kind of Heisman conversation. So you need him to help step up and lead the way. So kind of passing that torch, I think that's a big part of what they've asked those guys to do. Jerome Carvin on the offensive line. Okay, it's time for you to help lead the way even more. Maybe a Javonte Spraggin. So that kind of stood out to me in terms of
as well.
Yeah, those guys that are coming back, what they're going to have to pick up from last year's team. And then what happens next. It's not just about what you do in August. Right now, summer is here now. So what they do coming out of spring, getting guys back from injury. And then the last piece I would add, without going into great detail, roster management is a big part of it. Everyone knows, you've talked about it, the transfer portal. Mm-hmm. So Josh Heupel and his staff, I think that's a big focus for them right now, is figuring out who they can add, because they know they have some holes on both sides of the ball. I think one can pretty clearly be fixed on the at the wide receiver spot if Brew McCoy hops on, but on the defensive side, try to add some pieces. That's a big priority for the defensive staff.
Josh and Swain, weekdays noon to 3 on 99.1 The Sports Animal. What's coming up the rest of the week, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday on the show?
Yeah, we have a lot of football talk of what's going on with Tennessee football. Recruiting is a big part of the conversation. So I mentioned the transfer portal, monitoring that, but recruiting as well. So covering that. And yeah, it's look ahead time. Spring is in the rearview mirror, and we'll cover the NFL draft as well starting up on Thursday night.
Josh Ward every single Wednesday right here on Locked On Vols. I want to say about BetOnline, what a great time to be a sports fan. And what a great time to put some coin in your wallet right now. Put some coin in your pocket, because there is so much going on. We just got done doing a Masters Championship. The golf majors are happening right now. NASCAR every single Sunday. I made a lot of money last year betting on NASCAR, and I've already made a pretty penny this year, and I'm going to get back on that. I took a couple weekends off, but NASCAR is going on right now. You have the USFL going on right now, Major League Baseball, and put your sports knowledge to use. Your favorite teams, you guys are smart. You guys follow these sports, and you know how the numbers work. Help yourself out a little bit. You can get the latest trends, odds, specials, plus news, podcasts, all sports information. All that is online at betonline.net. Tennessee baseball, the overwhelming favorites, according to BetOnline, to win the College World Series this year. Maybe put a little futures guy in there. You guys know I love my futures, but be careful on those. You don't want to throw too many out there, because, again, it's futures for a reason, and it's always tough when you go against the field. But you can engage in all that and more. It's all at betonline.net. Betonline.net, it is where the game starts. We continue on with this episode of Locked On Vols. It's Wednesday. Happy hump day, everybody, and thanks for hanging out with us here today. Good stuff there from Josh Ward. I love chatting with Josh, and of course, I think you guys do as well. A lot of you guys used to listen to the show when he hosted the show, so wanted to make sure that he was a part of our everyday rundown each and every week. Good stuff from him, as always. And again, I encourage you, if you haven't already, if you didn't hear it live or you haven't listened to the podcast section, go find Josh on Twitter. Go find Josh and Swain on Twitter, or just go to 991thesportsanimal.com and listen to their conversation that they held with Josh Heupel back from earlier this week. All right, so Tennessee adds commit number 9 to this class of 2023. Tennessee now stands, this is according to the Rivals rankings, with 9 total commits. That is 5th in the country. Tennessee has 1 5-star in Nico Iamaleava. You've got 3 or 4 4-stars now with Ethan Davis, the tight end, Caleb Herring, the linebacker, Sylvester Smith, the safety who committed yesterday, and Trevor Duncan, the lineman from Knoxville Catholic. And then you have 4 3-stars in defensive lineman Nathan Robinson, defensive back Jack Luttrell, offensive lineman Aiden Bussell, and wide receiver Nate Spillman. So let's tell you about Sylvester Smith, who just committed to Tennessee yesterday, rather. He's a guy that can play, again, hashtag Mel Kiper. Here's a guy that can play pretty much anywhere in the defensive backfield, and that's what Tennessee wants, right? You want a guy that is a primary safety, which is what Smith is, but can play the star position, can play a little nickel corner, can play up around the line of scrimmage, can add some run support there whenever you need him, can boast out and go to an island if you need him to, play a little quarterback. But Sylvester Smith is just a playmaker. He's a top 100 prospect per Rivals. I believe he's a top 150 prospect per 24/7. He's, all around, which depending on which service you look at, he's a very highly regarded prospect. He stands in at about 6'1", 200 pounds. He is from Munford, Alabama, where he stars at Munford High School. And he is considered by Rivals the 3rd prospect out of the state of Alabama in the class of 2023, the 8th safety in the class of 2023, and owns a Rivals rating of 5.9, the 4-star, again, from Munford, Alabama. What makes him tick? Well, you're going to hear a conversation I had with his head coach, Michael Easley, coming up to end the show. But here's just a little bit of quote from that. He's very talented, a very talented player. He's very versatile, who plays on both sides of the ball for us. I believe he will be the same way at the next level defensively. Sylvester is a guy that who can sit back there in coverages, is a guy who can also play up close to the line of scrimmage and in the box some. He's going to be versatile. He's an explosive guy with good ball skills. even for us offensively. He catches the ball really well, runs really well after the catch, but versatility is going to be the biggest thing for him at the next level. It'll be big for him to focus just on one side of the football. His best ball is ahead of him, end quote. That is from Michael Easley, who you'll hear from coming up here later in Locked On Vols, the head coach of Munford High School. So versatility is going to be a thing, right? And not necessarily a guy that's going to play offense and defense, but a guy that can play a little bit all over the defensive backfield. And that's what you heard from Willie Martinez at the end of spring practice. Tennessee's defensive backs coach, along with Tim Banks, who coaches the DBs, but he's the defensive coordinator. Willie primarily focuses on the corners, but he's a veteran coach in the SEC that says, hey, we recruit players that are defensive backs. We try not to recruit exclusively cornerbacks. We try not to recruit exclusively safeties. Sure, they might have a home position, but we recruit guys to where we can plug and play wherever. That's look at Christian Charles. This is a guy that's going to play this fall. Again, I've been consistent in saying he might not start, but he will play. And it could be at corner, it could be at star, it could be at safety. He might start at one of those three positions. But his versatility is a reason why he's in position to where he's going to play starter snaps wherever, regardless, right? And that's what you want when you're recruiting defensive backs, and that's what Sylvester Smith is turning into here for Tennessee. And so I think he's a really nice player. You break down his film, and he can play all the different positions. He can play both free safety. He can play both strong safety. He runs well over the top in cover one. He's skilled in man coverage, keeping pace with the wide receivers on the outside and keeping up with the shifty ones in the slot who try to work across the field and climb and create depth. Tennessee's new commit, he's well inside the box as well and plays great around the line of scrimmage. He's very physical. He takes on blocks well and acts as a bonus in that run game, stopping that run game. The film shows he extends his strides down the field that helps him to defend the deep ball. He's got really, really good vision when it comes to reading the route tree and breaking on those routes to go and break up the football while it's in the air. He's quick twitch. He's instinctive. 6'1", 200 pounds. He packs a punch when he comes there. You watch his tape, and I mean, he really does. I think someone on the general quarters referred to him as a decleater, and I would have to agree. That's the type of guy you want roaming around in the defensive backfield for sure. A guy that will come up, make contact, and will make you remember him, right? He plays like a linebacker, I wrote, but he has athleticism like a defensive back. And so that's big. And kind of what's this mean for Tennessee? We kind of do this section in all of our impact analysis moving forward. Well, you add another defensive back into the mix for a position group that's about to turn over. We know at the end of this upcoming season, Trayvon Flowers won't be here anymore. Potentially, Jalen McCullough might not be here anymore. The star position right now is already in flux, and you're trying to figure out, who's going to play there. Is it going to be Wesley Walker, the transfer? Is it going to be Danico Slaughter? Potentially this year as he approaches his senior campaign 2 years from now. Jordan Thomas will be in the role once Sylvester Smith gets on campus. Christian Charles will be in this conversation. I already mentioned Wesley Walker. He might earn the opportunity to return kicks as well for Tennessee at some point in his future, this being Sylvester Smith. He's experienced in that regard, both returning kicks and punts, and he uses those long strides and good vision to hit the sideline, find the hole, hit the sideline, and go to the end zone. So you're getting a little bit of a guy that can do a little bit of everything in Sylvester Smith, and that's why he's one of the top prospects in the country. That's why he was heavily coveted by, Auburn and a host of other SEC programs. That's why he elected to come to Tennessee. You'll find it interesting, as I did, coming up here when we hear from Michael Easley, that the head coach from Munford, Derek Ansley, former Tennessee's defensive coordinator, Derek Ansley, was the first guy to reach out and offer Sylvester Smith a couple of years ago. And so that kind of, even though it's a different coaching staff, and I talk to some of these prospects a lot of times, they say, hey, Tennessee was my first offer. That means something to me. And I'm like, well, it's a different coaching staff, right? They're like, well, yeah, but still the Power T. I mean, that I remember that. It resonates with me. They were the first to come. They were the first to see something in me. And even though it's a new staff, the Power T remains. And so maybe that was the case here. But Tennessee gets a good one. Sylvester Smith, for sure. I'm intrigued by the prospectus of his makeup. His tape looks really, really good. I do think he's a guy that can help Tennessee. I don't think he's going to be a guy that's going to sit on the bench long when he's here at Tennessee. But, of course, he has another senior season, dealt with injuries this past year, and we'll see how it works from there on out. Again, Tennessee, number 9 in the country per rivals. Number 5 in the country per rivals. 9 overall commits. Joining a class of Nico Iamaleava, Ethan Davis, Caleb Herring, Sylvester Smith, who is the guy we're talking about right now, Trevor Duncan, Nathan Robinson, Jack Luttrell, Aiden Bussell, and Nate Spillman. He is the 5th defensive pledge of this class, joining linebacker Caleb Herring, lineman Trevor Duncan, defensive lineman Nathan Robinson, defensive back Jack Luttrell, and of course he makes up the 5th one there. So Tennessee continues to, build its momentum in recruiting. This is the 3rd week in a row Tennessee has at least one commit, and the Volunteers will look to continue to make waves via the traditional recruiting class and via the transfer portal in the coming weeks. All right, let's hear from Michael Easley. He is the head coach of Munford High School. I had a conversation with him that I posted at volquest.com. I'm going to play you the I'm going to play you the bulk of that conversation when we return here on Locked On Vols. But Built Bar, guys, I know I talk about Built Bar each and every day, but we have a group chat on Twitter of all the hosts in the college channel, and Built Bar is introducing granola bars, Built Bars, however they call it. I don't know what they're called, but they are literally granola bars, but they're Built Bars. I love granola bars. I eat granola bar for, sometimes for a snack or sometimes for breakfast if I'm running late. Love granola. And now you can get that type of flavor, that type of texture with your Built Bar. Still infused with 17 grams of protein, covered in 100% chocolate. It's a safe and easy, fun alternative to a normal candy bar that sits at around 240 calories. But you guys know this. You know the rundown by now. 130 calories for your average Built Bar, 4 grams of sugar, 4 net carbs, and the selling point, 17 grams of protein. All right. Mint brownie, coconut almond, all the new flavors each and every month. White chocolate's out right now, cookies and cream. It's all delicious, and it's all for you. You can check them all out, plus this new granola flavor Built Bar at Built.com. Use that promo code LOCK15, and you're going to get 15% off your order. Promo code LOCK15 for 15% off. That's all at Built.com. Last but not least, we'll have a conversation with Michael Easley. He is the head coach of Munford High School. He is the head coach of new Tennessee commit Sylvester Smith, a 4-star safety from Munford, Alabama. I posted this video at volquest.com, a part of our coverage for the Sylvester Smith commitment announcements. And I'm going to play most of it here for you guys here on Locked On Vols. Great stuff here. So gracious with his time. He was so busy, but he took about 10 minutes. I asked for 5 minutes. He gave me 10 minutes just to chat about one of his star players, Sylvester Smith, breaking down the player, what he does well on the field, and also the person off the field and the guy that he is. He thinks the world of Sylvester Smith and what Tennessee's going to get in Sylvester Smith. And, of course, you wouldn't think anything different of a head coach and talking to the media about one of their own. So here's my conversation with Michael Easley, the head football coach of Munford High School and the head football coach of new Tennessee commit, Sylvester Smith. All right, so first and foremost, Sylvester Smith, the player. What is Tennessee getting in this versatile safety?
Very versatile player. I've talked about it a lot throughout the process with coaches and some media guys. I think he's going to be a very versatile player that in today's defenses they have to play with more DBs on the field, and they have to have some of those guys are able to get down closer to the line of scrimmage if needed, and still be able to fit the run, and still be able to cover backs out of the backfield, stuff like that. Sylvester's going to be able to do that. He's a guy that can sit back and he can play what people would probably think of as a normal safety position and play some two-shell stuff, play some one high, play some middle of the field stuff. But he's going to be a guy that also can get closer to the line of scrimmage. And sometimes in today's football, you find some of those safeties that they can't get down there and play 7-8 yards from the line of scrimmage and still be effective. And I think he's going to be able to. He's a thumper. He's got good weight on him. He's around 192, 193 right now. He actually got up last year. I think he was over 205 at the time, and he feels much better. He kind of cut back down a little bit, and he feels a lot better. So I think that's going to help him as far as the coverage stuff and his movement. But he is just very versatile player, and he plays both sides of the ball for us. We're a small school, so he's having to play offense for us. He plays running back, receivers, played a little wildcat quarterback for us. He's played a little bit of everything offensively, moved all around the field. But his versatility is his biggest trait, I think. And he's just going to be I think his best ball's ahead of him. I've told everybody that. Every college coach has came through, and I mean that. I think his best ball's ahead of him, where he gets to focus on one side of the ball. He's on a training table. They're controlling what he eats, or he's on a weight program 12 months out of the year. We're not having to worry about. We're out of school that day, so we miss a workout, stuff like that. So, but very versatile player, great kid. He's fun to be around every day. Super competitive. Now, I'll say this: he is a guy that when we have our active rest weeks or active rest days, we'll get in there, and I always want to do something competing. So I'll split the whole team up. Whoever's in athletics that day, we'll split up into as many different teams as possible. We'll play basketball. We'll play something like that. He's the most competitive person on the floor. So I make sure I have to keep him down there. His group, a lot of times I keep him playing on the goal in front of me just so I can watch the game. But super competitive player. Outstanding young man too. He's a good kid away from the field. Just pleasure to be around. We enjoy coaching him.
Now, you told me a lot about Sylvester Smith, the player. You kind of got into it there. What about Sylvester Smith, the person in the locker room, away from the football field? Is he a leader? Is he a vocal guy? Kind of what's Tennessee getting in terms of the person?
Yeah, well, first, he's a good kid, first off. He's a guy that he'll come in and sit down in the office, and just some days, game days, I'll be sitting in my office, and we'll be 30, 40 minutes before we go out. He'll come in, plop down, and we'll just sit and talk. Usually it's not about football. Usually it's about life, or sometimes we'll talk politics and life. So we'll talk a little bit of everything. But no, he's a good kid. He's a guy that he's learning. He has learned and gotten better as he's gotten older. He's maturing and learning how to lead and stuff like that. So he's going to be a guy he's going to show up. He's going to work hard. This year was really rough for him too, because I don't think he turned his ankle early in the year, week 2, I think game 2. Turned his ankle and never could recover from it. And I don't think the people got to see, even our fans, got to see the best of him this year from his leadership qualities and stuff like that. So, great kid. I can't say enough about him. The thing I think I'll tell you, the thing I like the most and I'm most proud of him for is, number one, we've set him on a track to graduate in December. He's good with that. He's accepted that challenge. But number 2, a couple weeks ago, I wake up one morning I get up one morning, we go to church, I get home, and on the way home from church, I get a picture from him. He was getting baptized, and it was a picture he sent me of him getting baptized right there. And, that's the thing. We want good football players here. We want good athletes here. We don't want just develop football players. We want to develop athletes, but at the same time, a lot more happy and a lot more pleased with the young man he's going to become when he leaves here than I am. I don't care really what happens with football, as long as he's a good person and he's productive in life.
Chatting things up with Munford head coach Michael Easley. And coach, last thing, kind of I'm sure you coached a lot of great football players in the past, coach some more here in the future, but when did you know that Sylvester was a Division I, a Power 5 guy that, can play football at the highest levels and it has a future in the sport?
Yeah. So going back to his 9th grade year, he was inserted as a starter for us at safety game 4 that year. And very quickly I figured out, hey, this guy's gonna have a chance to play at the next level. And he was full speed. He always played full speed. And I talked to coaches about this. In fact, the other day was the first time I ever put a stopwatch on him since I've been here, but I didn't know how fast he was, like on a 40, but I knew he played that fast. Some guys will come out there and blaze a 4.4, 4.5, and then play like a 4.8 in a game. Mm-hmm. He wasn't one of those guys. I don't know how fast he ran in the 40, but that's how fast he played. So that was the first thing that stuck out to me, was he had great game speed. This was as a 9th grader. To tell you how much I trusted him his freshman year, we get into the playoff, or into the last week of the season, where we're on the line, playoffs are on the line, and we're in overtime. We win, we're in the playoffs. We lose, we're out, and we're actually on the offensive side of the ball in overtime. And the first 2 plays, my first down, second down call was to get the ball to him, and that was as a 9th grader. So I just, it was evident pretty early. Going to his sophomore year, he had a fantastic sophomore year. He was an all-state, first team all-state player. I think he had like 7 or 8 picks that year. Which is a lot for this brand of ball here, because we don't see people throwing it 40 times a week. So it's not like there's a ton of chances for that. But it was then, seeing just how good he could be. I thought he was an FBS guy after that. And just as coaches started calling me, in fact, Tennessee, this is when Coach, he's in the pros now, DB's Coach Ansley, Derek Ansley was there. Derek Ansley was actually the first guy to contact me. And that was his first FBS offer, was Tennessee. And so he talked about his skills then. So hearing him talk about him from a college coach perspective, then I kind of went back and started watching a little bit more film, trying to not look at it as his coach, but look at it as an evaluator. And a lot of his skill set was popping out as, this is an FBS guy, Power P5 guy. So, it was pretty evident his 10th grade year, just kind of looking back at it and seeing kind of evaluating it a little bit more, it was pretty evident then he was an FBS guy and a chance to be, special. And I hated last year. Last year was just awful. We had a rash of injuries, but his was something he really, he couldn't help. He just stepped the wrong way or got tackled the wrong way going out of bounds, I believe, and tried to play through it. And he was probably 75, 80% tops most of the year. So it just, I hate it because he lost a really good year, at least what he could have done numbers wise and stuff like that. But he, gutted through it, tried to play every week. So it was, like I said, going back to your question, it was evident his 10th grade year.
Really good stuff there from Michael Easley. Again, head coach of Munford High School, the head coach of new Tennessee football commit Sylvester Smith. Complete coverage of the Sylvester Smith commitments, all at VolQuest.com. Impact analysis, that coach's interview, and more that you probably heard up at VolQuest.com. And you can hear from the man himself, Sylvester Smith, as he broke things down with Austin Price. That's all at VolQuest.com. All right, you guys know that a lot of the Locked On channels don't bring you as much recruiting as we do here on Locked On Vols. But hey, when it's one of your gigs, you're going to get it here on Locked On Vols. I promise you that each and every time there is a commitment, you are going to get that here on Locked On Vols. Guys, thank you so much for making Locked On Vols your first listen each and every day. Now, check it out. Locked On the NFL Draft. Hey, it starts tomorrow. It is finally here. Where the VFL is going to go. They can tell you, they can project for you VFL, Bayless Jones, Alante Taylor, Cade Mays, Matthew Butler. Give Locked On the NFL Draft a listen today. Make that your second listen. Nothing like that coverage leading into the NFL Draft with plenty of coverage all weekend long right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Thanks so much for making Locked On Vols your first listen. As always, you guys are awesome, and we will talk to you again on Thursday, everybody.